Good morning, I'm Gary DeWaal, and this is Bridging the Week for December 10th through 14th, and today is December 17th, 2018. The Commodity Futures Trading Commission issued a request for input regarding the virtual currency Ether. It wants to understand better how Bitcoin and Ether are different and any unique qualities of Ether it should know about as it potentially considers permitting regulated markets to list futures or other derivatives based on Ether. Separately, the Securities and Exchange Commission fined 3 broker-dealers in aggregate over $6 million for not providing accurate trading information to it as requested through electronic blue sheets. In 2 circumstances, 100% of all electronic blue sheet requests during the relevant time were met with inaccurate information. This is the final edition of Bridging the Week for 2018, so I can wrap up my day job and get away for a bit of time before the new year. Let's get started. The Commodity Futures Trading Commission issued a request for input to help it better understand the virtual currency Ether in anticipation of the potential application by CFTC regulated markets to list futures and other derivative products based on virtual currency. In its request for input, the CFTC seeks responses to 25 specific questions, including what are the key use cases that demonstrate the functionalities and capabilities of the Ethereum network? Does a proof-of-stake validation system have a greater potential to be manipulated than a proof-of-work system? How do the governance of the Bitcoin and Ethereum blockchains differ? And are there best practices for the creation and security of Ethereum wallets? However, the CFTC will accept any relevant comments, even if not addressed by specific questions. Comments must be provided to the CFTC by 60 days after publication of the request for input in the Federal Register. Ether is another virtual currency like Bitcoin, and for the past year has typically been among the top 3 cryptocurrencies on the basis of market capitalization. Ether is the currency, or sometimes known as the fuel, of the Ethereum blockchain. Ethereum was developed by Vitalik Buterin and 2 colleagues in 2013 to facilitate so-called smart contracts that would serve as the core of decentralized applications developed by programmers. I have a lot more on Ether and Ethereum, as well as a discussion regarding the legal nature of Ether on the written version of this blog at www.bridgingtheweek.com. Check it out. The Securities and Exchange Commission levied cumulative fines in excess of $6 million against 3 registered broker-dealers for their failure to submit accurate securities trading records in response to electronic blue sheet requests for such information. The 3 firms and their fines were Citadel Securities, $3.5 million, MUFG Securities Americas Inc., $1.5 million, and the Texas Securities Americas LLC, $1.25 million. According to the SEC, both Citadel from November 2012 through August 2016 and the Texas from December 2012 through February 2017 included incorrect trade execution times on 100% of their EBS submissions during the relevant periods. Because of coding errors, both firms converted execution times to Greenwich Mean Time as opposed to Eastern Time. For Citadel, these errors were included in 2,774 responses to EBS requests filed with the Commission involving 80 million trades, while for the Texas, these mistakes were in 1,237 responses involving 148,763 trades. Many of Citadel's and the Texas's EBS responses also reflected other errors, said the SEC. From May 22, 2015 through March 30, 2018, said the SEC, MUSA had errors on almost all of its 860 EBS submissions involving 677,613 out of 687,176 transactions. In its submissions, MUSA made errors regarding order execution times, exchange codes, transaction type identifiers, opposing broker number, and counterparty identifiers. The SEC claimed that MUSA also failed to include 2,151 security transactions in its filings. Generally, the SEC alleged that each of the broker-dealers failed to have adequate pre-submission controls to validate that information in their EBS submissions was accurate. Each of the companies voluntarily settled its SEC action. Relevant entities that may be required to file electronic blue sheets with regulators should periodically review submissions against source information to ensure their systems are properly capturing and processing such data correctly. In each of the Citadel, MUSA, and the Texas orders, the SEC expressly cited the companies for not having adequate pre-submission controls to validate that their EBS submissions were complete. For example, in the case of the Texas, to implement sufficient, quote, periodic sampling or manual validation, end of quote, of EBS data prior to submission. And finally, the National Futures Association proposed an interpretive notice to provide commodity pool operators with guidance to design and implement adequate systems of internal controls in order to comply with their general obligation of supervision. Although NFA recognizes that what constitutes, quote, an adequate internal control system, end of quote, may vary from CPO to CPO based on its size and complexity of operations, NFA will require all CPOs to formally implement an internal control system designed to prevent fraudulent actions by employees, management, and third parties, to help secure the integrity of customer funds, and to provide, quote-unquote, reasonable assurance that financial reports are accurate and that a CPO complies with applicable CFTC and NFA requirements. CPOs should also have an escalation policy for employees to report violations of their internal control system to management and, quote, whether and when a matter should be reported to a firm's regulator, end of quote. A CPO's internal control system should be documented in writing. Well, that's it for this week's edition of Bridging the Week. As always, there's more information in each article and more articles on the article version of Bridging the Week on the website, www.bridgingtheweek.com. Check it out. I'm Gary DeWaal. Have a great holiday season. Until the next edition of Bridging the Week on January 7th, 2019. Ciao.